Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauda Chishe Namaha Nityanandam Namastubhyam Premananda Pradayane Kalo Kalmashanashaya Janava Pataye Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Brindai Tulsi Debai Priyai Keshavasya Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Ashtatara Shata Shri Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. And then I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat Pranams and Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Astotara Shata Shri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj and Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Ashtatara Shata Shri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And my Dandavat Pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga. And my Dandavat Pranams to all of the Vaishnavas and all of the Vaishnavis. So today, on the calendar, Vaishnava calendar, you know what day? We talked about it a little earlier. It's the day, the Titi, that Srila Gurudev departed for the first time from India. On this day, he went to the airport and boarded the plane.
Did you go to Holland?
Holland. He went to Holland first, naturally. Brajanath and Tungavidya Didi and Gopinath Prabhu. Yeah, they were arranging. So, and then after that, after the Holland trip, I wish we would make a chronology of Gurudev's travels like they have for Srila Prabhupada in Prabhupada's archives, you know. And they arranged that according to especially his lectures, so that they knew which dates he was going where. But we need that for Gurudev, especially for his first tour. You know, that first epic tour, so many important things happened on that tour. And so when we recount it, we should be able to know the dates of his lectures, the date of his traveling from, you know, from Holland to England. And in England, where he went, how long he was there. Then he flew from there to, you know?
Houston.
Yes, to Houston, because Vishnu Prabhu was there. I got a call from Vishnu Prabhu in that year, 1996. And I don't even remember how I got alerted, but he got my number and he called me. And I was here in California, down in Los Angeles, I believe I was there. And he said, well, you know that Srila Gurudev is coming. I knew Srila Gurudev was coming.
That's where I first met you.
Where?
1996 in LA, before Gurudev came.
But that was just a few days before, right? Or a couple of weeks?
Yeah.
Oh.
You were preparing.
Right. But this is like more than 2 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, more than 2 months before Gurudev's arrival in America. And so he was telling me that we need to make some arrangement for his West Coast tour. They hadn't done anything at all. Like, contacted no people. And there was only a few of us, you know, like Pran Kishore, Tirthapada, myself. Yeah, Kalimba. Yeah.
And your Gurudev met him before, right? Didn't your Gurudev
No.
meet him the year before in India?
I don't think so.
No, he didn't. It was later. It was
No, not near Guna.
Colombo.
I don't know if Kalimba met him or not. But anyway, so in those days, that was 1996, and in 1995 I had gone, and then Pran went to Malaysia, and we were selling paintings there, and our main objective was first of all to be closer to Srila Gurudev, because, you know, he's there in India. And at that time we had no inkling that he would actually come to the West, although we would talk about it. He said, wouldn't that be amazing if Gurudev actually came to the West? You know, but we didn't really even know that there was a plan in the works. They were very quiet about it, Rajanath and all of them. But there was a plan in the works to bring Gurudev. So anyway, I heard that Gurudev is coming to the West. You know where I heard it and when? I heard it in Taiwan. You might remember I told that story. Because I was on my way from Malaysia or Singapore, whichever place we were in, on my way back to America, and I scheduled my flight to stop in Taiwan along the way. And you know Jivan Krishna? He was there in Taiwan because the year prior I had trained him how to sell paintings. That's a whole story. So anyway, he was there already when I arrived in Taiwan, and then we rented a room in some hostel place. And then, in those days we're not even using internet or email or anything like that. So somehow or other, Pran found out. Maybe I had told him where I was, but I got a phone call there at the place where I was renting a room, and then he told me. He said, I have some very, very important news to inform you of. And he said, it's actually very heavy. I said, what? And he said, oh, a very great Vaishnava has left the planet. And when he said that, I was thinking, no, it couldn't be Gurudev. No. But then he immediately said, Srila Govinda Maharaj. And I said, really? And we had met in the previous year, in 1995, all these Govinda Maharaj disciples in Malaysia, and they were still collecting by selling paintings. They had already been there for a few years. That's how they built the temple in Bhubaneswar, from those collections. Yeah. And all the devotees like Jagadish Pandit and Gokul Prabhu, Raghava Pandit, even Prem Prayojan was there. He was named Parantapa at that time. And so, we had some good relation with them, even though they were technically in ISKCON, but because they were under Srila Govinda Maharaj, they became more aware of, the need for sadhu sangha and hearing, because Govinda Maharaj stressed this so much. So we created quite, friendly relations with them, mutually appreciative. And Gokul Prabhu rented an apartment, and that became like the place where we would gather for kirtan programs. And we would go there, not all the time, but we would go there. So we learned so much about Srila Govinda Maharaj during that time.
Had you ever met him?
I had only seen him. Actually, I was there when he took sannyas in 75. But, I didn't know anything about him. And then in 1977, it was Bhagavat Prabhu, now our Bhagavat Maharaj, who told me that he had just come from Bhubaneswar, and that was in the early period before they built the temple there, and he was living in the mud hut, and he was with Govinda Maharaj for almost a year. And it was he who told me, I remember standing there in front of the Krishna Balaram altars at the ISKCON temple, and he told me, I just came from Bhubaneswar. I was with my godbrother, our godbrother, Govinda Swami, and I really feel that he's a pure devotee. I said to him, what? You know how it was in those days. The term pure devotee could not ever be utilized by any devotee, unless Srila Prabhupada had told that someone was a pure devotee, right? So then, he told me that. I said, really? He said, yeah, I've been observing him. I've been with him the whole time, 24 hours a day practically. And I see his qualities and his bhajan and his realization, everything. I think he's a pure devotee. So that was my first impression of Govinda Maharaj, And so as that year continued, 1995, and we began to learn more and more about Srila Govinda Maharaj. And even there were some tapes that they had, we listened to, Govinda Maharaj lectures.
You were the senior devotees when you come together for Sangha. Would they defer and have you give the class and such?
They would ask us sometimes to lead kirtan. And speak something once in a while. But it was really their program for their people, And I was wearing white still. I was in Vanaprastha, but I was wearing white and doing business. So, anyway, toward the end of that year, then I decided to go back. It was my plan to come back here to California. And it was in the month of February that I made this journey to Taiwan. And, in February is the day that Srila Gurudev Maharaj departed, on the appearance day of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, early February. So, when I got this call from Pran Kishore, at that point, I had already made a decision that I was going to go to meet with Srila Gurudev Maharaj, and have some of his association. But when Pran told me that, then I was quite shocked. And of course I wouldn't be as shocked as his own disciples. My God, and all the stories that I heard from them, those who were even there in Mayapur, they didn't even believe that Gurudev Maharaj had actually left his body, because he had gone into a kind of deep bhavuk state for a few months one time earlier. So they didn't believe. But at any rate, then they also drove from there in a van all the way down to Bhubaneswar with the body of Gurudev Maharaj. And then the next day the Samadhi was performed. And ISKCON leaders came there. So anyway, when I heard that from Pran, I was shocked. But then he said, but I also have some more news for you, very important news. I said, what is it? He said, are you sitting down? I said, yeah. He says, Gurudev is coming to the West. I mean, when I heard those words, I became so excited. I said, he is? When? He said, they're making all the plans, it's already set. He's going first to Holland, then to England, and then he's coming to America. I said, he is? Oh, then I said, I'm going with him. I'm going to travel with him wherever he goes. So then I got back to America. And, within those first few weeks that I was back, I got this call from Vishnu Prabhu. And then he said, that Gurudev is going to be coming to Houston, and then after that, he's coming to Los Angeles. I said, really? He says, yeah, and we don't really know of any other persons except for you and Pran and a few others that can help to make the arrangements for his tour. So I said, okay, yeah, I'll do that. He said, first of all, he needs a place to be hosted at. In those days, the Gurudev didn't have barely any followers, in America. So anyway, I told him that I'll stay in touch with him, and I would start to line up a tour. I mean, they had no plan where he's going to go, anything. So then I got in touch with Kasturi, and naturally with Kalimba. And Kalimba was living up here at that time, in the trailer park, I think, right? Kalimba. She was married to Raghunandan, but I'm not sure if they were still together at that time. At any rate, she was here in Badger. And then I began to discuss with Kasturi where he should go on his tour. And we came up with the idea that, okay, he'll spend a week in LA. And then I made a plan to drive him to Badger through Bakersfield, because I was staying there sometimes.
He spent a night in Bakersfield?
Yeah, not one. He spent like at least 2 nights. Because I was staying at a hotel there regularly, and the hotel was owned by an Indian man who was a Gujarati, a Patel, one of the Patel hotel owners, you know. And he liked me so much, you know, because I was even going to India, then coming back, and I even gave him the Hindi version of the Jaiva Dharma to read and everything. And he saw that every morning I'm doing my sadhana at my altar, everything. So that man, Bagubai, I think that was his name, Bagubai Hotel. So he had, you know, connections with all the other hotel owners and the whole Gujarati community there. And they were building their own community hall and temple in Bakersfield. And there was one man who was also a hotel owner. He was building I think it was the Best Western Hotel, right at the juncture when you come off the Grapevine, and then at 99, and then it turns to Highway 5. Just when you turn off Highway, right there. It was brand new. So anyway, I arranged that we would bring Gurudev there, and he stayed at one wealthy Gujarati's house for a couple of nights, and did 2 programs, and speaking mostly in Hindi, you know. And so, that owner of the new Best Western housed all of the devotees. At least there was by that time, at least about 40.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, even just coming from England when Gurudev landed in LA, before he landed, in the 2 or 3 days before, so many devotees were showing up from England, you know, from Holland. So we had an entourage from the day that Gurudev landed in LA of at least 30 devotees, you know. And then that's a whole story, because I had to arrange that temple in Fullerton. Yes. And that, you know who helped me? Because I didn't even know the existence of that hotel, was this devotee named Rohini Nandan. Do you remember him? He was Mexican, I think. Rohini Nandan, he was a Prabhupada disciple.
Yes. Yeah.
And he was a very, very operatic kind of singer.
Yes.
Kirtan singer.
I know. Well,
Yeah.
It was him that I first heard Gurudev from. He had a kirtan tape
Yes.
of Gurudev, and he would say, listen to this, and so we would listen to it over at the Spanish BBT.
Yeah, and he lived in an apartment right across the street from the temple, and I became acquainted with him. See, what happened was this. We made our plan for Gurudev, and Kalimba, of course, was involved, and so she was communicating with her mother. And we made a plan Gurudev would come up here to Badger, right? Then from here, Kasturi was absolutely, you know, completely determined that Gurudev was going to stay in her little flat, the same one she has right now in Oakland, you know. Not a very good area, not very big, you know. That's where Kalimba and Radhanath live. So, but we knew that Gurudev's that's not going to be his main place. So Kasturi knew Radhakanta. She knew him from the early 80s, or even the late 70s, because they were in the Berkeley Temple at that time. And her 2 daughters, Kalimba and Madhavi, they were at that time maybe like 13 years old, 14, something like that.
Just come up from the dinner.
Yeah. And so so she knew Radhakanta, who initially, I think, what was he named?
Vaishnava.
No, that's later.
Oh.
What, under Hansaduda, Bhagavatananda or something like that? Bhagavad something. Anyway, that was his name from Hansaduda. So, but then he became initiated by Tamal Krishna Maharaj after Hansaduda, and then he got the name Vaishnavananda, yeah, from Tamal Krishna. But then, after some time, he wasn't feeling much connection, and he became attracted to Srila Gurudev Maharaj. So then he began to associate with Srila Gurudev Maharaj when he would come to the West, and also he went to Bhubaneswar. Those were like in the last maybe a year or two that he was still on the planet. But Gurudev Maharaj, although he wanted to take initiation from him, Gurudev Maharaj wouldn't give to him because he was already initiated, by a ISKCON guru in so-called good standing. So, but at any rate, she met him at the Berkeley Temple around that time. And then she told me about this person. And she said, yeah, this devotee, Vaishnavananda, he's actually, I know him very well from the early 80s, and he's a very good devotee, and he's a businessman. He has a nice house in Walnut Creek. I think it was in Walnut Creek. And I talked to him. And I talked to him about possibly hosting our Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj. And I told him a bit about Narayan Maharaj. And then she said, and he's agreed. But first of all, he wants to meet you and me together. So he's invited you to come to his house. So I drove all the way up from LA, and they had like an evening dinner, and then we talked. I told him all about Gurudev and everything, and he was appreciative. And then he agreed, okay, I'll host him, And so that was set, right? Then we also arranged for Gurudev to go to Eugene, Oregon, where Tripurari Swami and Sringa Maharaj and them, they had started a temple there.
Did they host him in their place?
I think so. I think so. It was in their temple. It was in their temple, yeah.
Tilakesha was in Seattle, right?
Yeah,
Right.
but that's a separate thing because Kalimba was arranging that side. Oh, wait, who was it? No, Sudevi. Because, I'm the one that, just like I talked to you, I talked to Sudevi about Gurudev coming. And she was staying in some apartment across of Watsika Boulevard. There was that one place behind the alleyway where the restaurant used to be, the Govinda's restaurant,
Yes.
And I was, at that time, anyway, that's a whole story. I was involved in some business with that one Madhu, that one Indian devotee, and Raghunath, their clothing business thing.
I know.
Right. So in that way, I became acquainted with Sudevi and with Kishore Mohan, because they would do kirtan in the temple almost every night. And they had this whole slew of Guru Kulis. I think it was really the beginning of their starting to get together and do kirtan and all of that,
8 o'clock kirtan.
Yeah. And so I attended that a couple of times, and I saw how devotional Sudevi was. She's sitting, just like now, during kirtan. And so it just so happened that I bumped into her there at the apartment, and I told her, I said, that there's a very, very great devotee coming to visit Los Angeles, a very intimate friend of Srila Prabhupada, and he's the one that performed the samadhi of Srila Prabhupada. Oh, really? And I began to tell her about Srila Gurudev. And even just by her hearing about Gurudev, she became very attractive. Very attractive. And of course, she tells her own story. You've probably heard it before, right? How when she first saw Gurudev and first met him, it was love at first sight, the way she puts it, And she became so utterly fervent that she took initiation from Gurudev without even mentioning it to Kishore Mohan, who at that time was up in Seattle. Yeah, in Los Angeles.
So she was the only one that really got initiated in LA, right?
I don't know, I can't remember.
And so Kishore Mohan was up in Seattle, right?
Yes.
And he had an intention, I think, to take initiation from Nrsimha Maharaj. Wasn't that?
Who? Kishore Mohan?
Yeah, if I remember right.
I don't know. Could be, because at that time, his father was working for Nrsimha Maharaj. The whole t-shirt thing that they were doing, was all in the line of the Sri Maharaj. And Mithilajish had been associated with them for a couple of years, 2-3 years. So, he also underwent a conversion in his heart because he had committed some offenses against Srila Sridhar Maharaj, having poor knowledge previously in the early 80s, So now he was making amends for that, and he started to print different books, little books of Srila Sridhar Maharaj or lectures and things like that. He had some connection with printing. But he was connected with them, and they helped him to become much closer with Srila Sridhar Maharaj. So those are the places we lined up. Now, after Seattle, we didn't line up Seattle. Well, we kind of did. But, it was also in conjunction with the plan that Brajanath had, because I don't know when it happened that Brajanath made, added Vancouver. He added Vancouver to the tour on the West Coast. And they had the dates already set for Gurudev's return flight back to Europe and then to India, which was from New York, right? So there was already a plan for Gurudev to go out to New York. And so this is the way it was lined up. So after we got all this agreed upon, and the Fullerton Temple, I think I drove down there and met that one devotee, Suka something, or
the Pujari was a disciple of Bhakti Srila Maharaj.
Right, something. What was his name? Suka, or anyway, I met him, but he wasn't going to be there because I told him about Srila Narayana Maharaj coming, and he was gone somewhere.
And so, did the temple itself arrange the living quarters for Gurudev there?
Well, let me explain that.
Indian devotees.
The Fullerton Temple part of this story. So, this Rohini Nandan, I went to his apartment, and he had many tapes of Srila Gurudev's kirtans, and he was expressing to me how much he loved the kirtans of Narayana Maharaj and everything, So then he's the one that suggested, because what had happened was, in LA, because I was living right across Watsika there, and so in LA, I was thinking, maybe I'll try to contact the GBC and inform him about Gurudev coming. Maybe this could be a way for ISKCON to kind of mend relationships and all that, right? And so, what's his name? The GBC, who was not Bhajanarayan, the other one from South America, Veerabahu and Katha, they were both there. And I went to his apartment, rang the doorbell, he opened the door, and I introduced myself. I'm Uru Kramadas and disciple of Prabhupada, but I'm also one of the secretaries of Srila Narayana Maharaj. I'm helping to arrange his West Coast tour. He's coming here to Los Angeles. And as soon as he heard that, it's the first time he heard that, he said, come in. So anyway, I stayed for like 4 hours there, and Katha came out and we were all talking. But Veerabahu he just kind of copped out of the whole thing by saying, well, I'm actually not scheduled to be here at that time in LA. And, but my co-GBC is Bhajanarayan, but I can assure you that you're not going to have any luck with him at all. So eventually I just gave up the idea. But we had talked, and Veerabahu told he had appreciation for Srila Gurudev. Can you close that window? And then, it was my responsibility to arrange some place in LA. And so it was Rohini Nandan who suggested, you know what? I think it'd be a good idea, the Fullerton Temple. And he knew the people there. So he also called them and arranged. And I don't remember going, well, maybe I did drive down there to see it or whatever. But at any rate, it was set. It was kind of set, you know. So after everything had been set, then I thought, okay, now I'm going to fly back to Malaysia, and I'm going to spend 1 month collecting so that I have enough money that I can buy the plane tickets and fly with Gurudev wherever he's going on the tour. So that's what I did. I went back to Malaysia.
At what point did you do that?
Well, it was like it was probably like 6 weeks before Gurudev was to arrive.
Oh.
So I came back after 1 month, and there were still 2 weeks left. Okay, maybe it's that at that time that you might have met me, just prior to a couple of weeks before Gurudev came. And so you know what happened? In the meantime, the GBC had found out. They found out about that Gurudev was coming, and Hridayananda Maharaj, he held a special Ishtagosti in the temple room, trying to inform all the devotees that this person is coming, and we will greet him with respect. He's a senior Vaishnava, but no one should closely associate with him. And he indoctrinated the whole temple with this negative attitude. So, and what happened was, the GBC got in touch with the Fullerton Temple authorities, which were the Indian Gujarati people, and told them that, you know, that our GBC is not favorable towards this person, Narayan Maharaj. So, you know, if you're going to be hosting him, that could create some problems in our relationship, you know. And so what happened was, those people, the Fullerton Temple people, they went back on their promise. This is literally 2 weeks before Gurudev is meant to arrive there. And they had agreed to host him and everything. And now they contacted. So Kalimba, just prior to my flying back, she started to do everything in her power to change that. And one of the things is that she got in touch with Agni Dev, and you know, who had been temple president in your most beloved Laguna Beach temple. And for many years, he was like 10 years he was there, and he knew those Indians very well. So between Kalimba speaking with them on the phone and Agni Dev also calling, then they decided, oh, well, okay. Because they didn't want to commit an offense against the great saint, you know. So they agreed, but they said only him, only Maharaj and his immediate entourage we will agree to host. So, and this is all going on, you know, within days of Gurudev's arrival. So, I remember even, because I was staying in Bakersfield sometimes, and I went to an automobile auction there. Never went to an automobile auction before, because I wanted to get a nice vehicle for Guru, because we didn't have anybody that had good vehicle, nice vehicle, this, that. So I bought a Lincoln Continental town car, you know, like really a big boat floating, and it was in good condition, you know, for a couple $1,000. And I thought, Gurudev, this can be the car that he will be driven in. But it never happened, because Pran Kishore got in touch with Ram Das up in the Bay Area, and Ram Das gave his van for Gurudev to use during that tour. So I never sat in that car. But I drove the devotees around during that tour, you know. Anyway, okay, so now the day is coming near, and it's the next day is the day when we're going to all go to the airport and greet Gurudev. And also I had told Narihari and Bhavacharani, kind of like the same way that I had told you. And they became excited. They actually came to the airport. But you know what happened after that? They actually did kirtan out on the sidewalk when Gurudev was getting into his vehicle. But after that, for some reason they didn't even know that Gurudev was doing programs and all of that. And then a whole couple of years went by and they had no connection. Yeah. Narihari and Bhavacharani. So, but we all went to the airport, and as I told, devotees were showing up in front of the LA temple the day, 2 days before. They had flown in from England and this and that. So none of them had a place to stay, right? Nor much money. And anyway, on the day that Gurudev arrived, of course the Fullerton Temple knew. We've informed them of his arrival details and everything, and that he'll be driven there, right? So we went to the airport, and we waited at the bottom of the escalator for Gurudev to arrive, and then to come down the escalator with Madhav Maharaj and Gurudev's Danda. And so we were doing kirtan at the bottom, waiting for him, and at least 30 devotees. And suddenly Gurudev came onto the escalator with his turban, looking so effulgent. It was such an amazing moment. And he came all the way down, and he was smiling. And then we surrounded him when he reached the bottom and continued with the kirtan and began walking with him. But in order to go down to the luggage, we had to go down an elevator. So we all went into the elevator. Not everybody could fit, But Gurudev was with us in the elevator going down, and we're still doing kirtan, Nitai Gauranga, And then we got to the luggage area, right? And then from the luggage area, Gurudev was sitting and waiting somewhere near to the luggage. And then in the meantime, Pran had driven the van up to the waiting area. And so when it was time, we brought Gurudev out to the curb, and that's where Nrihari and Bhavacharini had Mridanga and kartals, and they were doing kirtan. Gurudev got into the vehicle, and then all the devotees, because somehow there were a good number of different vehicles. There must have been, 7 or 8 different vehicles.
Radharaman Temple wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, so when we drove down the freeway, I was leading the way, because I knew LA pretty well at that time. And then we arrived there, and I think it was late afternoon. I don't quite remember the timing. Maybe it was early afternoon, like 2 o'clock or something. And when we showed up with all these devotees, there was a couple of those gentlemen were there to greet Gurudev, and they saw all of us. And they were not agreeing to host. And you know that Budara had come, and even I think Gopinath was also on that tour with Tungavidya and Vrindadidi, of course, and Brajanath. So we just very humbly requested them, that Maharaj is the first time he's coming, and he has this entourage that's just spontaneously came over from Europe, and we're just going to be here 1 week, and we would really appreciate if you could allow us to just sleep in the temple room. They have a big temple room there, and we'll keep everything completely clean. We'll just, And so reluctantly, they agreed. And then Gurudev, with his small entourage, stayed in the house. Yeah. And so that week, that's a whole epic story. That first week of Gurudev's preaching there, he went to so many houses of different Indian people and really cultivated them, And all those Gujarati men who were more administrators, they warmed up a lot during that week, and they could see that it was the right decision that they made, And there was one day when Gurudev, he was invited by this one old man who was the oldest, Patel. He's passed away since then. And he requested that Gurudev could go and visit him. Now he lived not too far from there, right on the ocean. So I don't know exactly where it was, but we drove there from Fullerton, and Gurudev was invited, and it was an Indian doctor, very wealthy, but he'd been in America for like 25 years, you know, become extremely successful. He had his grown-up children, his son who was going to university was there. And so, yeah, we drove there with our, you know, caravan of vehicles.
So there's like 30 devotees that
Yeah, oh yeah. No, all the devotees were coming to each one of the places each day. And, you know, so we all got out of the car and they had this very big, huge doorway. It was kind of like not really a mini mansion, but it was a very upper class house.
Newport Beach?
I can't remember at all, you know, where it was. So, and this huge, gigantic doorway, which was probably like 10 feet tall, you know, and it had like 2 doors that would open out. So we rang the doorbell, and we're standing there with Srila Gurudev and all the other devotees. We rang the doorbell, and we're waiting, and we ring the doorbell again, and we're waiting. And finally, one door opens up, and it's his wife, the doctor's wife, and she's just wearing blue jeans, and she's an Indian lady. And she welcomes us in. Please come in, please come in. And so she brought us in and brought us into this, like a living room area, which had gigantic glass windows looking out directly onto the ocean. They were literally right above the ocean. You know? And Gurudev was seated on a sofa. So, you know, Gurudev is sitting there, and the lady is greeting and saying that her husband is upstairs and he'll be coming down shortly, right? The doctor. So, in the meantime, we start having some kirtan like that. Or even before the kirtan, the son of the doctor comes. And he was so westernized and Americanized and not aware of how you treat a saintly person, that as Gurudev was sitting on the sofa, he went over and shook Gurudev's hand. You know, he's probably like 20, 21 years old. And then he sits down on the sofa right next to Gurudev. And we're all like, what? You know, that's where Gurudev's going to sit and speak from, right? And we didn't say anything, you know. But then Gurudev, you know what he did? He put his arm around him and looked at him, smiling, you know. So he sat there for a few minutes, and then he got up and went. But anyway, then Gurudev began to speak. He began to give Katha. And yeah, I'm not sure if the doctor had arrived before he began or during, but he was quite late. And when the doctor came down, he also sat far away from Gurudev. He sat like at the end of the room against the wall, you know. So Gurudev told the Katha that I never heard him tell again after that, but he told a story. And it was some ancient story from Puranas or wherever. And there was a Vaishnava Brahmin who was like an astrologer. Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Radha Govinda Ji Ki Jai. So, and he lived in this kingdom where the king was a pious king, but he had become quite materialistic. So, and that Vaishnava astrologer, Brahmin astrologer, he had calculated the king's chart. And when he did the calculation of the king's chart, he noticed that the king only has a few days to live. So now he became very concerned that he should somehow or other gain audience of the king and inform him of the situation. So he goes to the palace and he tries to gain entrance, and there are guards, and and they're not allowing him to come in. He says, I have to see the king. I must see the king. I have some very, very important news, very urgent news for the king. So they're not letting him through, but then all of a sudden the queen came by being carried on a palanquin, and she noticed and heard what this Brahmin was saying, and then she immediately stopped the palanquin and called the Brahmin over. And what is the important thing that you have to tell to my husband? He says, my dear queen, I have a very urgent message for your husband, because I'm an astrologer and my calculations never fail. And I've calculated your husband's birth chart, and for sure he only has a couple of days left in his life. His death is coming. Then the queen became upset, and she began to chastise him, How dare you come with this? But then he just stood there peacefully and he said, it is okay, you can chastise me, but I can assure you that what I am telling you is exactly going to occur. Now she became very serious and very concerned. So through her, she brought him in and brought him to the king. So when he met the king, then he submitted his message to the king and told him that, my dear king, according to my calculations, your death is very soon coming, within the next few days. You have very short time remaining to live. Then the king became upset, and he started to also chastise him. How dare you? I will put you into prison. You can do that. If you desire, you can do that. But I assure you that this will happen. So now the king was like, what should I do? Because now they're believing him. So now the king, he says, what should I do? And then the astrologer tells to him, my dear king, you should not so much worry, because according to my calculations, you have done so many pious activities, and it is sure and certain that you will be going to a very high destination in the heavenly planets. So you do not have to worry about that. And then the king, he felt some relief. Oh, okay. But then the astrologer said, so there in the heavenly planets, there are no problems. No one grows old. They live for so many millions of years. And everything is very wonderful there. But there's only one problem. Oh, well, what is that? They have some mosquitoes there. And then the king said, oh, they have mosquitoes? And the astrologer said, yes, but also there's a solution, because they have mosquito nets there. And so by the mosquito nets, they can avoid getting bit by the mosquitoes. And then the king thought, well, okay. But then the astrologer said, but there's still one problem. That the mosquito nets, they have some holes in them. And they need to be sewn up, the holes closed. Otherwise the mosquitoes will come in. And then the astrologer said, but there's only one problem. They don't have any thread and needles there for sewing up the holes. And then the king began to think, And he said, well, then I can bring from here when I go. And then the astrologer said, but, O king, how will you do that? Because from here, you cannot bring anything, not even your body, not even a hair on your head. How will you do that? And then the king got the message at that point that, oh, yes, it's true. You cannot bring anything. And then the Vaishnava astrologer began to enlighten the king and speak to him about the absolute truth and how we're going from one body to another, and what you need to do is you need to do bhakti to Bhagavan. So by the association of that astrologer, the king became enlightened. And surely his death came and he went to a higher destination. So this is what Katha Gurudev chose to tell in that doctor's house. You see? So after Gurudev's Katha, then his wife had prepared some Indian food.
This was in English, the Katha, of course.
Yeah, totally. So, but she had put onions into it. And the devotees were starting to inform Gurudev. Gurudev said, shh, don't say anything, just take. So then what happened was all the devotees, we had a short kirtan, and then the devotees went to take some prasadam. They offered the prasadam and everything. And then the doctor came forward. And he came forward and greeted Gurudev and sat there on the carpet in front of Gurudev. And then this whole experience for him was causing him to remember his childhood, because he grew up in a very wealthy family in India, maybe Delhi, I don't remember. And they had huge land, and they had a temple, and they had their whole courtyard areas and everything. There was a temple there. And he was telling us how he remembered in his childhood, how he used to go to that temple and watch the ceremony and the artik and everything. So by Gurudev's association, some sublime memories were coming into his mind. But he admitted how he had become very forgetful of all that culture and everything. He's been in America for so long. So Gurudev, of course, gave him his blessings like that. And then after that, we came back to the temple. So I think that was the last day before the Sunday program, and Gurudev was going to be leaving on the Monday after that. And so the Sunday program, there was like 300 Indian people that came. And Gurudev spoke to them in Hindi. He gave the whole lecture in Hindi, and he spoke some English at the end. And then this Bhagubai Patel, the elderly man, he took the mic. He was kind of like the master of ceremonies there. And he took the microphone and stood just in front of Gurudev's Vyasasana off to the side and addressed the audience. And he was especially talking to us. He said, we are so much impressed by all of you Western devotees, how you can sit here through an entire lecture in Hindi, you don't know the language, but you're so dedicated. We've watched you this whole week. And it has been such a wonderful experience actually to host our dear Maharaj and to host all of you, and then he started to say that we were in a dilemma whether we should do this or not. And he told us, he said that we were discussing it and we were going back and forth. Maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should, maybe we shouldn't. And then he said, but we decided that yes, we will host Maharaj, and we can tell you that we are so happy that we made this decision. It happened you came and you have won our hearts.
Oh,
And then all of us just clapped and everybody was very happy. And after that, you know, the Indian people, they know that they should wait in a line to get the blessings of the sadhu and all of that and give some pranami. So Gurudev sat there on his seat and they all came one by one in front of him. So that was our experience at Fullerton. Then the next day, we had our caravan of vehicles driving over the grapevine to Bakersfield. And in Bakersfield, 2 nights we were there. And then from there, the Gujarati community there also, they liked Gurudev very much. And they even brought him to the site where they were constructing their new building and stuff. So, but you know what? The Indian communities in America, you know what they're like. And they see so many swamis coming throughout the year, getting donations, this, that. They never stayed in touch with Gurudev and came closer. But at least they did that seva, and they had some positive mood. So from there, we drove up the hill to Badger, California. Came up J21, right? I had lived up here for 4 years, so I knew very well how to drive up to Badger. And so when we finally got up the hill, we drove up the driveway here, and in the parking lot area here was Brajendra Nandan Prabhu and a few devotees. They were doing kirtan and greeting Srila Gurudev. I don't remember who was there. Maybe Gopal was there also, I'm not sure. But there was a few devotees, not many, 5, 6 devotees or something. Then, of course, Nirguna came and greeted Gurudev and escorted him here into the house, showed him these 2 rooms in the back, and asked him which one he would like. And Gurudev didn't want to inconvenience the family, so he chose that smaller room, which is the library room, Hansagati stays. And then Nirguna's whole story about how that whole experience of meeting Gurudev completely blew his mind, you know, because within about a day or so, he began to realize, I have a pure devotee in my house, you know. So Gurudev gave the Katha up here, and I think he was only scheduled to stay 3 days, you know, and then we were going to go up to the Bay Area. But the devotees here, Nirguna's family and the others, they requested Gurudev to please stay a couple more days. So we did. And then on the day that Gurudev was leaving to come up to the Bay Area, then, you know, the family, Nirguna's family, were watching, and as the vehicles were driving off. And later on we heard their story, that here they are all alone in this house again. Gurudev's gone, all the devotees are gone, and they've gone just up to the Bay Area. So I don't know how quickly this happened, whether it was within the first few hours or whatever after Gurudev left, but they all realized that, what are we doing here? Why aren't we going to go up there? So that's what they did. They had a van.
They had an RV.
Huh?
They had an RV that they
Oh,
drove.
did they have an RV
They
at that
just
time?
parked it outside of
Oh,
Gurudeva's
yeah.
house.
Okay. Did you come up to the Bay Area?
Me and my dad went up.
Only the 2 of you?
Yeah, with Paramount.
Ah, okay. Where'd you stay?
I don't remember.
Hmm.
We
How
might
old-
have stayed.
how
I
old
was
were you?
like 10 or 11.
Yeah. And you were the only one that went up.
I somehow was the lucky one.
How did you make that decision?
I mean, I didn't make the decision.
Oh, they asked you, would you like to go? Or?
It must have been. I don't remember. It was just like, all right, we're going. You can come with me.
Okay. Just in a car or a van or what?
We went in Paramount's car.
Oh, okay.
3 of us.
It's so nice. Wow. Yeah, so then, you know, we went to Kasturi's apartment first. Gurudev stayed the night there. They had arranged some kind of strange little places for the devotees to stay in that neighborhood, you know. But it was only that one night. And Gurudev gave a program that night. It was so small, little apartment. All the devotees could barely fit in the apartment, you know. So, yeah, so then the next day, Gurudev was brought to Radhakanta's place. And that was epic. There's videos, you know, Rasaraj was taking videos of that, and that was an amazing week. Yeah, Gurudev giving that special katha there. And of course Radhakanta's heart was stolen, but he still hesitated for a while, as it was so soon after Gaur Govind Maharaj had left. But I think he took initiation. Maybe he came to India. I don't remember quite.
Had Gaur Govinda Maharaj made some kind of prediction among his disciples that that year, 96,
Yes,
would see a world change? He said it was like the Prem Yuga.
called it the Prem Yuga. I heard from the disciples also. He said that, and he said, Prem Yuga is coming, and Shuddha Nam will manifest, and the Acharya will manifest. And all of his disciples were thinking, that's him. He's the one. And then when he suddenly departed, you know, they were so shocked. They were so shocked. Because there was no indication before that. Not even health-wise or anything, you know. They just left his body there in Mayapur, speaking that very high katha of the Jagannath, appearance of Lord Jagannath, to you know who?
It's a Vaijanti Mala. Was it her that asked the question?
Chandrika,
Chandrika.
who lives in Hawaii now. Chandrika.
The poet.
No, that's a different god sister. I forget her name. Chandrika is the mother of who?
Krishna Chaitanya?
Yeah, Krishna Chaitanya.
Yeah.
KC we call him. Yeah. So,
Rupa Vilas.
Rupa Vilas was her husband.
Yes.
I knew them from the early 70s. They were teachers in a Gurukula in Dallas, Texas, you know. So anyway, and there was one other lady. I think she was the wife of this ISKCON Prabhupada disciple who was staying with Gaur Govinda Maharaj. Bhaktarupa, that's right. Yeah. So I think the two of them were the ones that came and asked Gaur Govinda Maharaj to speak some katha. And he began to speak that katha. And they were present when he suddenly said, I cannot speak anymore. And he laid back because he was sitting on his bed. And then the servant came, and within minutes, he departed. Yeah. So, but he did make that prediction. And we can see who that Acharya manifesting actually was. It came true. And from the Bay Area, then we went up to Eugene, and Gurudev was there maybe 3 days. Don't have time now to tell the details on that. And they hosted him, but they also found some fault. And then they became distanced from Tripurari and all of them. But in the East Coast, Srila Maharaj was doing his tables in Washington, D.C. And yeah, from there we didn't go further. We didn't go along with Gurudev from Eugene up to Seattle and all that. Because Gurudev was going to be flying within a matter of days. He was going to be flying to New York.
My daughter Garangi got initiated in 96 tour. She was the only one in Seattle. It's like
she got initiated there in Seattle.
Gurudev, yeah.
But Kishore Mohan, I don't think he took initiation then. He waited a while.
How long was Srila Gurudev from America? For how many weeks or days?
Well, on the West Coast, maybe 3 weeks. And then there was another, almost a week in Canada. And in the meantime, we flew to the East Coast.
And he was in Houston for a while.
Oh yeah, I forgot. So maybe it was like 5 weeks total. Houston, and then the West Coast, and then another week there in New York. So maybe it was almost 6 weeks.
And that's where he met Pradyumna and...
Yeah. So, we went, we came back to the Bay Area and, bought our tickets to fly, and a whole bunch of us, we flew to the East Coast, Shamrani, and I think probably Vrindavan Vilasini, I think she was on that first tour. She was? Yeah. So, we flew out there, and then it's the same situation. No, where's Gurudev going to stay? And they had this Brooklyn temple, the newer one that they still have now. And in that neighborhood, this one Indian doctor, he had a house, just walking distance, a few blocks away from the Brooklyn temple. So somehow or other, and he was very eccentric. And he had like a multi-story house, right? And he had cats and stuff, and it was just very, very unkept and dirty. But anyway, we stayed there, and Shamrani's calling. She's got this whole long list of people that she knows from the East Coast. Who can host Gurudev? Who can host Gurudev, She's calling, and this is going on for a few days. And in the meantime, we're thinking, what if we have to host Gurudev here, in this place, And we started cleaning everything, just in case. But at the last minute, Shamarani got a person to agree, who was named Jairam Das, and he was a Prabhupada disciple who joined the movement maybe in '68 when they had moved to the other newer temple in New York, before they moved to Brooklyn, And he hosted, and he had hosted Bhakti Sundar Govinda Maharaj previously, and he said, yeah, I'll be happy, but I won't be able to be there because I'm a musician and I go into Manhattan every week and I play and then I come back on the weekends. So, you can use my house, and I have a brand new Chevy Suburban van, and and you can fully utilize it. So he gave that for Gurudev, and the first couple of days after Gurudev's arrival, we made the arrangement to go into Manhattan.
It was in New Jersey, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in New Jersey. So we drove into Manhattan, and actually, what's his name, Ramesh from Costa Rica, he paid for this hotel right near to 26 2nd Avenue, a business hotel. And we all stayed in these rooms, crammed into the different rooms, and then the next morning, the evening when we arrived, Gurudev gave a program at a yoga place, and then the next morning, Gurudev came to Tompkins Square Park and 26 2nd Avenue, and the videos are there that you can see. Huh?
I just saw that the other day.
Really? His lecture?
No, just him and the Harinam and him speaking with Shamrani Didi.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't see the lecture.
Yeah.
Just them there.
Right. But that's also there. You should look at that lecture sometime. Amazing lecture. So that ended Gurudev's stay, and all successful. And that's where Mukunda, who was working with Nrsimha Maharaj, came up with a couple of others, and that's when he left Nrsimha Maharaj's thing and became he just fell at Gurudev's feet,
Did Gurudev visit the Tawaka, the New Jersey?
Yes, he did. They invited him, and that one, I forget his name, Danudar, he was there at the time. So, but of course they made sure none of the devotees were there, and we came, and they wanted Gurudev to take some prasadam. He wouldn't. And they brought the Maha plate to Gurudev when he's sitting in the vehicle and we're about to drive back. And Gurudev only touched it to his head. He wouldn't even accept any prasadam there. But they did give him a chance to speak in the temple room, but no devotees were there except for us. And so that ended Gurudev's visit.
Wow.
So today is the day. Every year that we celebrate Gurudev's first tour to the West, when he left on the auspicious day after Nrsimha Chaturdasi. And maybe you can calculate the year if it was actually Pratipat, because today is Dvitiya. And so I think it was Pratipat that he left, because it was after the full moon day. So, Gaur Premanande. Jai Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj coming to the west, ki jai. Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai.